I, Dr. Narasimha Jammi is a very respected person in the world of the interface between traditional medicine and modern pharmacology. Dr. Narasimha Jammi is the CEO of Jammi Pharmaceuticals, Chennai, a very, very old traditional family-run business. Jammi has a PhD in biological chemistry from the University of Utah, and he did his postdoctoral training in molecular pharmacology at Stanford University in California. After more than a decade of successful research activity in the States, he returned to India to take research management roles in the diagnostic and biotechnology industry, where he has a track record of successfully handling and managing large commercial projects. And after that, Jammi took over the reins of Jammi Pharmaceuticals in 2011, old company that was handed down through the family to him in 2011. And since then, he has played a big role in changing the existing business model of the company to make forays into new markets throughout the country and around the world. His passion and belief in Ayurveda, combined with his technical and commercial knowledge, makes him a highly sought after Ayurveda exponent in several parts of the country. Dr. Jammi is also known to be keenly involved in research activities which focus on elucidating the mechanisms of several of his products. I want to add here that one of the family's traditional products is the management of hepatitis virus. And I'm delighted to have Jammi with us. Jammi was with us in 2016 at the Second European World Ayurveda Congress in Koblenz. So, Jammi, delighted to have you with us. Thank you for joining us from Chennai. Do tell us a little bit about your old family, the traditional family
Sure.
company, and how it's come down the generations. Also about your particular involvement in rasa aushadhis. This is your interest, and this is that controversial aspect about Ayurvedic formulations. And we are hearing so much about the benefits it offers, but somehow we still haven't come up to speed with what needs to be done. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
You bet. Thanks, Madan. Thanks for the introduction. So just to give a very brief background on Jammi Pharmaceuticals, it's a 123-year-old organization from Chennai. It was started by my great-grandfather, Dr. Jammi Venkatramaniya Garu. He was an Ayurvedic Vaidya. And he had passed on his knowledge to his sons and my grandfathers, and they to my father, and my father to me and my younger brother. So we've been trained in the traditional Parampariyam way of learning Ayurveda. So my training itself, as Madan had pointed out, is in molecular pharmacology and biological chemistry. And my interest in Ayurveda stemmed from the fact that I had an argument with a colleague of mine several years ago, decades ago actually, who said that, liver cirrhosis is irreversible. And then I said, no, it's not, because liver cirrhosis can be cured using Ayurveda. And one thing led to another, and then we got to having several interesting sessions of discussions about this, and I'm happy to say that that colleague of mine is now the director, one of the directors of Jammi Pharmaceuticals. She is Dr. Anita Balachandran, who has actually done a lot of research along with me on understanding how our Ayurvedic formulations can actually address hepatitis B and liver cirrhosis. And we are actually working with IIT Delhi and then Tata Memorial and several other institutes in trying to understand the mechanism of action of these age-old formulations. And my particular interest, like Madan had pointed out, is in rasaushadhis. I think mercury has got a really bad name, and I really am, if I could, I would shout from the rooftops about the importance of mercury in treating several diseases, especially if you know how to treat mercury, how to purify mercury the way it is done in the Shastras, and that's something we've been doing for at least a century now, and we're experts in it. Along with this, what I would really like to say is that it's got a very, very significant position in treating a lot of viral diseases. And that's exactly what I want to talk to you about. That's the brief background about this. My interest in Rasaushadhis, the interest has been long-standing, and we've been continuing to do research in Rasaushadhis for quite some time, and will continue going on because a lot needs to be learned. And we want to dispel the fear that inorganic mercury obviously is very toxic. However, mercury, when purified the Ayurvedic way, has a lot of medicinal benefits, and that's something that we want to make sure that people understand. Again, it all depends on the dosage, it all depends on the amount you're using and what you're using it for. Obviously, not all Ayurvedic medicines actually contain mercury, but then where it's necessary, you've got to use it. Now, having said that, having used that as the preamble, I'd like to get straight away into my version of what the opportunities are going to look like post-COVID. And I actually want to talk about opportunities more than the challenges, because the challenges we all know exist. We all know what the challenges are, and we need to understand it holistically. And what I really want to say is that Ayurveda has obviously already had an impact. You know, you have all of these newspaper articles, the media saying, you know, there is tremendous scope for Ayurveda in the treatment of COVID. So COVID has really opened the eyes of a lot of people in understanding the importance of Ayurveda in addressing diseases. I call them orphan diseases, and orphan diseases are those that don't really have a cure in allopathy, and then people tend to look at external science to actually see if they can help. And I think Ayurveda's time is now, and we need to make use of this particular situation. Sounds very callous, but I think it's very important that we need to make people aware of the fact that Ayurveda has got a lot of solutions for a lot of things, and that's exactly what I'm going to be spending very little time about, given the fact that I have about 15 minutes. Immunity is obviously the new mantra. Immunity boosting formulations abound in Ayurveda. Rasayanas will become de rigueur in the coming months, and people will prefer natural herbal-based preparations to synthetic formulations, right? And this is something that because of the fact that immunity as such is a very broad subject, and immunity has got so many aspects to it. And what I actually really dug up when I was doing a lot of reading for my, I teach a lot of students, and what I actually came up with is a 2009 paper where there was a hypothesis where they've shown that immunity and the digestive system could have evolved from a common methodology, right? So there's possibly a common evolutionary ancestor for both these two very disparate systems, both immunity and the digestive system. And as we all know, digestion is something that is so important in making sure that we are healthy, and it's actually spawned off a brand new segment of science called the microbiomics. And that's where modern science is at right now, whereas we've already known that you are what you eat. And that's the central mantra for Ayurveda. So let's get back to that at a later point in time. So digestion is very, very important in making sure that you have a good system to fight off diseases. Now, remember this, I'm hard pressed to make people understand that immunity does not mean you will not get infected. That's not what immunity means. Immunity is the ability of your body to fight off diseases, right? So you could be corona positive, but you may not really suffer the way other people have suffered because you have a good immunity system. Saying that, you know, you're not going to get infected with the virus because you're taking Ayurvedic medicines is a pipe dream, and that's simply false, because then you'll have to be living in a bubble. That's not really the case. Immunity actually means that when you actually fall sick, you recover much faster. That's my way of looking at immunity. And when we say we have to make sure that you're taking immunity boosters, that's really what we need to be focusing on, is making sure that even if you fall sick, you recover quickly. And that, in my opinion, is what immunity is all about. Right? And we will use the success stories from the pandemic to address well-known lacunae in healthcare. And there are several opportunities that we need to address, that we can address. And these are all things that we need to focus on. And right now the focus is on wellness. Okay, everybody is talking about wellness. Everybody's using Ayurvedic medicines, and right now, holistic health and wellness are taking center stage. Right? There's mounting community cognizance. There's a surging amount of disposable income, and there's a yearning to alter lifestyle. Right? So because there's a lot of these millennials who say, you know what, I want to be healthy. I don't want to smoke. I don't want to have too much to drink. So all of these things are very critical in making sure that people are actually, you know what, I want to be healthy. That's what they're looking for. And consumer patterns are already undergoing a vast change, and well-being is actually now priority number one for everyone. Okay, and wellness is something that as an industry that Ayurveda is primed to actually play the leader in, because there are so many different formulations in Ayurveda that actually can make sure that your wellness and your well-being are maintained over a long period of time. And targeting lifestyle diseases. Again, this has actually been going on for quite some time, but the COVID has actually opened a lot of people's eyes to the fact that Ayurveda can be a solution for a lot of different problems that were not being addressed with properly, optimally by allopathic medicines. You know, you have hormonal imbalances, you have PCOD, obesity, cardiac problems, and several other diseases. And these all can be addressed without any side effects. We make sure that we cure these diseases at the root, and people are beginning to slowly realize that allopathy actually does not have very optimal solutions for this. Now, let's not throw the baby with the bathwater, because it's very important that we all understand that allopathy has its place in the present day world. We need to make sure that we recognize that. I'm by no means dissing the science or the system of allopathy, but it's got its place, and it's not something that you want to treat lifestyle diseases with. And this is something that I think is a very important role that Ayurveda can play. It's got the potential to alleviate patients with rare diseases or orphan diseases, you know, bipolar diseases, liver cirrhosis, the Guillain-Barré syndromes, autoimmune diseases, lupus, SDTs, multiple sclerosis, and several other orphan diseases. We have several published papers where we've shown that Ayurveda can actually maybe not cure, because most of these are genetic. There's a genetic component to this, but it can probably ameliorate or make the situation of the particular patient a lot better by getting treated with Ayurveda. And this is something that should not be ignored, because there's a large segment of population that actually are treated by allopathic medicines who don't understand the role and the importance of Ayurvedic medicines in these rare and orphan diseases. Gynecological solutions. And if anybody were to ask me, I'd say if you have a gynecological problem, do not touch allopathy with a 10-foot pole, because the side effects that you get from taking allopathic medicines for gynecological problems is something that you don't want to be dealing with. And there are several gynecological problems that are being faced by the women of today, because of the modern day lifestyle, because of stress, because of the kind of food that's being consumed. And all of these can be addressed successfully, might I add, and permanently with Ayurveda. So Ayurveda for women is another field that has a huge opportunity that can be significantly tapped into. Sexual wellness. Let me tell you this in a very uh, uh, emphatic way. Sexual wellness is something that's no longer taboo to be talked about. People really need to make sure that they understand that sexual wellness is something that they need to, or it's an important part of life. As a matter of fact, there's an entire treatise on sexual wellness, the Vajikarana system in Ayurveda. And these are all things that, and it's such an important component for psychological well-being and emotional well-being of both men and women. And sexual wellness is something that Ayurveda can have a huge impact on and a huge role to play. And this is something that I think we can do very well. When I say we, I mean the Ayurvedic industry as such can do very well without any side effects. And that's very important, because there's no point in making sure that you treat sexual wellness and end up having a heart attack, because that's not really what having well-being is all about. So this is something that is a huge opportunity for us. The challenges, obviously, Dr. Damle had already spoken about. Standardization, and there's the burden of proof on us. We need to address that, and investments have to be done on research and quality control parameters, bona fide raw materials like Dr. Sajikumar had spoken about, and the marketing savvy, right? We need to make sure that this is something that we need to be cognizant about, pay particular attention to, is how we market the Ayurvedic formulations, the Ayurvedic industry as such. We need to be coming across as being very scientific in our approach. We need to tell people that, you know what, this is not some sort of no, it's not voodoo. This is something that we need to make sure that, and obviously there's a lot of science that's happened. We've shown that there is a genetic basis for Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. The landmark seminal paper in Nature has shown that. This comes from Manipal. And we need to understand and address these regulatory hurdles for export. So these are my few 2 cents worth on the opportunities and challenges post-COVID. And I'd like to thank you, and I'd be happy to address any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Jammi. It was a brilliant presentation. Now I would hand over to Dr. Madan for the first reflections. Dr. Madan, please reflect on these papers. I will give you the first opportunity to reflect, and then we will start from there.
Thank you, Hari. Thank you. Thank you, Jammi. Thank you, Sajikumarji. Thank you, Ushkesh. You have touched on some very, very important key points, and we feel particularly privileged to have such a powerful collection of minds here with us. And very, very happy that you've been so forthright with offering your thoughts and your comments. And I feel there are several things that are coming up also in our question answer that are coming up in our chat boxes. But I just want to take a moment just to refocus and to bring back our discussions to where we are and where we need to go. And if I quickly display my first screen, you will see what is it that I mean by a distillation of all of what we have had here. So Sajikumarji's comment that globalized Ayurveda, what is Ayurveda in Global Health 2030? The vision of health is changing, something that's owned by everyone, used everywhere. But are we getting our wishes onto the table where they should be? I feel we need to rehearse more. I feel there are many gaps. We have the tools and we have the resources, but we are not quite getting there. For instance, you know, this is one example, the traditional knowledge digital library, TKDL. It has about 300,000 formulations. And are we even touching the surface of what is in here? And this is work that's already been done by the ministries, and the data is waiting. And I'd love to hear a little bit of comments from our three speakers as we go on. The second thing, there are institutions like SDM Hassan in Karnataka. I hope they'll come to us and be with us in future events. This is the Silver Jubilee celebration of the university. Rajiv Gandhi University, Health Science Kerala has its own, Maharashtra has its own. How do we bring them into the dialogue? Again, this is a question for all three panelists. How do we bring them into the question? How do we align our thinking with the thoughts that are coming from New Delhi about wanting to think even bigger and do even better? Here's an example of what happens in Karnataka. This is the case in every other state in India. You know, 54 medical colleges, 43 Ayurveda colleges, Unani colleges, yoga colleges, homeopathy colleges, and all for 65 million people. Bangalore, for instance, is already the world capital for information technology. Can Karnataka become the world capital for health narratives? And the Valley is already thinking about the Ayush Foundation, and the Ayush Valley is already thinking about this. In terms of Jammi's comments, I put this up here about safety of Rasa Aushadhis. The Ministry of Ayush has published a very good booklet talking about Ayurvedic medicine and the safety. We have the Unani group who have published documents, about about this volume has 72 diseases and how it is to be treated in the Unani system. We have discussed clinical trials. This was from one of our previous speakers, Puneet Mittal, Director of Research at the Mittal Global Clinical Trial Services India. We have resources in-house. So Puneet told us about this Ayurveda bypass. You know, is this valid? Is everybody going to buy into this fact that Ayurveda has been used for so many millennia? And is this bypass a valid thing, or do we need to do more? So this is something for our panelists to consider and for people in the audience to raise questions about. Are our trials being conducted to the good clinical practice guidelines? So these are issues. I would love to get some feedback, quick open thoughts about all these issues. Maybe Jammi can start off with because you've shared with us a lot of insights, and a lot of people don't realize, Jammi, you know, for instance, they don't realize you are taking care of a company that's 123 years old and has a huge database of information already on what your father and grandfather have been treating for liver diseases, for instance, using mercury and sulfur, using standard formulations, which are still some of your best-selling products. Why is it that we are not being able to get our message across? Is it because we don't care, or is it because we haven't tried, or is it because there is some other reason? And you've been in Stanford, you've debated with the best minds. What is missing in getting our products to the global scene? So start with yourself.
I'll tell you what's missing. I think the missing.
Could we have your microphone a little closer to you, Jammi? Thank you.
Yeah. So what is missing is what was missing, which is no longer the case as far as at least I'm concerned, is the confidence of being able to say, you know what, mercury, just because it's mercury, is not going to poison you, right? So because we've been so tuned and we've been so consumed with all of this heavy metal bashing that we are like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't be talking about this. But then when I've been treating patients and like you said, for 100 years, and again, I'm not giving them milligram doses of mercury on a daily basis, and that's not what's happening here. We're actually working with Kajali, and then we're working with classical formulations like Hutasini Rasa, which nobody else in the country makes except us. What actually is missing is what was missing was the confidence to actually go and say, you know what, let me do clinical trials on this. Now, I actually approached a whole bunch of CROs saying we want to do this. We want to do clinical trials on Hutasini Rasa, which is a very, very potent antiviral. And like I was mentioning before the session started, we've treated COVID patients with a combination of Sudarshana Churna, which is a very classical, it's an amazing product for any disease that has got fever as its symptom. There are 64 types of fevers in Ayurveda, and Sudarshana Churna is indicated in every single one of them. And that plus Hutasini Rasa plus Swasananda for the cough related. So this combination has seen a lot of these COVID patients become negative and resume their lives normally. And
could I bring, because you've raised a very important point here, could I bring Sajikumarji? Saji, you have some comments here. So if we focus to this, to what Jammi has just offered us, please, Saji.
Regarding the Rasaushadis, that's
Rasaushadis, and also this thing about clinical trials and global acceptance. Yeah. You gave us a good presentation about the figures and where we could be, and your experience on all of those areas.
Definitely, we also as Dhathri Ayurveda, we have done many CTRI. I think it is there in the WHO website. More than some 11, 12 products are there. We have done some 10, maybe 10 to years back. And many products are under this phase 1, phase 2 studies. Like for our COVID also, we have one product is getting studied. See, here the question is, even though whatever be the Ayush systems does with respect to the medicines, we have to create a trust among the public and also among the policy regulatory bodies that our product works. So it could be from a treatment from a manifestation point of view, or maybe taking this reverse pharmacology approach in a bigger way. So here, I think we have to consider three factors. We have to work on three areas. One is working on building the credibility to accelerate the value-based growth. And
is this credibility within the community, or within the community to the external world and the so-called non-Ayurveda community? How do you, when you say credibility, it's a big term, you see.
Within the community, it is all about confidence. There is nothing to talk about the credibility, because already all the Ayush system people who are working, they know, they have conviction with their treatment. That's why Jammi is talking from the heart.
Absolutely.
He knows, he has conviction. And all the people who are working in this field has conviction. But the issue is to build confidence. We have to build confidence within the Ayush system on one side. At the same time, we have to build trust among the public. So that can be done definitely showing the research methodologies, the product has proven on one side. And regarding the products, we have to showcase the research data where the government has to support in such a way that the system can actually work.
Saji, I want to stop you here briefly, because your point is very important. I have Dr. Bala Prasad here with us, who was previously in the Ministry of Ayush. I want Bala Prasad ji to come into our discussion, but before I bring Bala Prasad ji, I want a few thoughts from Rishikesh, please. Rishikesh, if you could just add some more fuel into this discussion before I bring Bala Prasad ji.
Okay. Basically, if you're talking about going out of this country to another country, each country protects their own people with their own laws, and they have their own systems in place, which have to be convinced. If you have a document to convince FDA that your drug is, safe, then you can definitely, you need set of studies. For your information, we have one herbal product which is registered with the FDA. So it is possible for us to do, because we can't ask
which is this product?
Sorar Sal. You can go, there's a topical called Sorar Sal, which is registered with the FDA. Now, there are various different types of, again, I come back. In Germany, we were the fastest grown any biotech company last year. And in whole of Europe, we were 72nd fastest grown pharma company last year, because there is so much of research which has gone in. But unfortunately, you look inside India, if I have to convince my allopathic doctor friends to prescribe, we have created a whole political system where one hates the other. One hates the other for their own reasons.
Rishikesh, thank you for this. This is a very important point that you've raised. This is something that all our panelists will have, but I want to bring Bala Prasad ji for just 2 minutes so that he can throw his thoughts on this. Balaji, namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you for being with us. So,
first of all, I'll congratulate you and the all panelists for making excellent presentation.
Thank you, sir.
In fact, I'm also particularly impressed with how Mr. Sajikumar expressed the word globalization of Ayurveda. That reminded me, I had presented a paper on globalization of Ayurveda when I was joint secretary in an international program. Coming to the present situation, Mr. Sajikumar has said that our export for the Ayurvedic drugs will grow from 1,000 crore to 7,000 crore, whereas extract will grow from 2,000 crore to 50,000 crore. This should be reversed, because we have many classical drugs, single drugs, like this Samsani Vati, it is of Giloy tablet. What is problem in exporting in place of Giloy extract this product? Because once you convert into a product, you are creating more value addition and more job in India. Coming back to the Mr. Jammi's thing about the rasa. You see, problem is that long back there was a JAMA article where it was pointed out that Ayurvedic drugs were containing heavy metals. The problem is that...
Balaji, if I may, I want to stop you here for a moment, because the JAMA article is very true. I want to bring Dr. Baswati Bhattacharya. Baswati is one of our has been one of our panelists, and she's holding the hard top. So Baswati, could you take us through the point that Bala is touching on and focus us a little more sharper into this dialogue that needs to happen? Because we are very lucky to have Rishikesh, who's an MD, who's running a very successful company, growing very quickly in Europe. And we have Sajikumar, who's looking at the Confederation of Indian Industries, some certain chapters. Now, could you hit us hard on in your characteristic style so that you blow a few myths out of the water, so that you really press hard on some things here? And I want you to press hard on this lack of confidence. I want you to press hard on some of the lack of communication between communities. And I want you to press hard on that point that Balaji just raised about the JAMA article. Thank you, all yours. If you can just be as frank as you can.
So one of the problems with that heavy metal content article was that people did not read it well. They just looked at it and ran with, oh no, what happened? That came out in December of 2004. It was by a guy in Boston named Robert Saper, and it became known as the Saper paper. And it was, of course, published in JAMA, which made it very well seen. But the article really didn't have a lot of first of all, it had no clinical value. Second of all, despite the fact that they had an Ayurvedic Vaidya on the group of authors, it really did not reflect any Ayurvedic collaboration or wisdom, because what it said is we went in a distance around City Hall and created a line, and we looked at all the stores that we could find Ayurvedic products. Then they didn't have a lot of internet sales, so it was mostly physical stores. And we found that there are all these products, and we analyzed them using atomic spectroscopy, and we found that there's a content of heavy metal, which was arsenic, lead, mercury, and cadmium. And oh my gosh, there's lead there's a metal in them, and so this is bad, bad, bad. And if they're in these, then they could be in all of them, and we just don't know. They didn't even understand what Rasa Shastra was. They didn't approach the fact that products like Maha Yogaraj Gugalu or Kajali or any of the Rasa Oshadhis are going to have metals in them. Second, they didn't talk about the fact that metallic compounds, which have gone through Shodhana and Marana, which is an amazing process yet to be discovered by modern science, which tells people that unless you purify a heavy metal in the right way and make it usable, like the knife that is a weapon if used in one way, but is a tool when used in another, we must have the knowledge to do that. And in fact, these Vaidyas from the time of the Vedas have had this knowledge. So why aren't you reflecting that in this JAMA paper? Why are you making it purposely polarized and absolutely biased in a way to make it sound like all Indian medicine is stupid and ignorant and contaminated? And the Indian government, sorry Bala Prasad, but the Indian government, which could have been very smart about this, I talked with S Lavekar, I talked with S.K. Sharma about this because I was very concerned about the access of Rasa Oshadhis into other countries. I asked them, why don't you just show a pharmacoepidemiology paper? Why don't you just explain that Rasa Oshadhis purposely have metals in them? You know, where were the people that actually understood Rasa Oshadhis to speak up in an articulate way? And no one did. And Saper came out with a second paper, but not quite 4 years later, and it blasted it again. And then the way that the Indian government reacted was like a dog with its tail between its legs, not standing up for its own medicines. And the rest of us in the global Ayurveda community were left trying to war without having the authority, the position, or the resources that a simple set of experiments could have shown, not using atomic spectroscopy, but using something like atomic force microscopy, or even other, coupling spectroscopy methods, which look at the way in which a metal is surrounded by organic matter and creating alkyne bonds, which then allow it to have a completely different nano material characteristic than what you see in regular quote unquote heavy metals. Can I stop there?
I want to stop you there because I see Jammi nodding to everything that you're saying. Jammi?
Yeah, I mean,
are you going to help us take all this to Stanford, your old university?
I totally would love to. because
Please we want to hear you clearly, please, the microphone.
oh yeah. I keep forgetting. I would love to. I would absolutely love to.
What do you need from the Indian government to take this message to Stanford so that we can use the best resources in Stanford? Atomic force microscopy.
Them to actually have a little bit of faith in the Kajali Shastra in Rasaushadis, because I don't think it exists in the Indian government. I think as far as they're concerned, Ayurveda means Triphala and a bunch of other things. So common, but that's not all it is.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to come back to this biology. So there is a finger pointed to yourself. I know you're not part of government now. You've raised the question and you're in trouble.
No, I'm not in trouble. I'm a science student. I'm a rank holder of physics from BHU. Okay. And I can understand you see, we defended in two ways. We said that, look, on human body, either a biological cell works or a chemical compound or physical force works. And chemistry, it works a molecule, not an atom. They had used atomic absorption spectrometer, which is this is potassium cyanide poison, but potassium is not poison. Similarly,
Balaji, I'm going to interrupt here because we have so many people throwing questions at us, and there's amazing discussions coming through. I want to bring Rishikesh here. Rishikesh studied, he's an MD from Bangalore, from one of the respected medical colleges in Bangalore, and he runs a company, very successful company. He's giving us evidence for interaction with interleukin-6. Rishikesh, do you want to tell us a little bit about how Rasaushadis, which you may or may not be dealing with, but what you've heard about, and where the stumbling blocks are? I see you nodding again to Baswatiji's comments that the Indian government has not done enough. And I want to put this in perspective as to why I feel so emotional about this. The top 50 drugs in 2015 had a total market value of $220 billion. This is the top 50 drugs. None of India's drugs appear anywhere there. If we have magical drugs like what you have and what Baswatiji is talking about and what Jammi has, why aren't we in that list? My challenge is that in the next 5 years, can we capture not 10% of this 220 billion? Can we capture not even 5%, not even 1%? Could we capture at least 0.5% of this market? And you have some experience. I think you have a lot to tell us. Number one,
I want to quickly make 2 points. About the heavy metals. We don't make those drugs, but then sometimes we are to blame. We buy raw material and we test them, and quite often we find the heavy metals in herbs, which is which should not be there. It can be there in a rasa preparation there is a purpose for it to be there, but there's no purpose for heavy metal to be present in Mandukaparni, that is Centella asiatica or Ashwagandha. Secondly, if some government has to accept it, we have to do toxicity studies. They are not very difficult. Do cell-based assays or do some in vivo studies and prove that they are not having toxicity. I don't think with that data, when we go to any government, somebody will listen, whether you go to Stanford or Harvard. Otherwise, I don't think they will listen because they have their own biases. They think mercury kills. They don't realize, like us, that mercury is really a nectar. They don't understand that.
Jammi, do you want to come in here quickly?
Just very quickly.
Hello.
So these metals that you find in the herbs, it's to be expected because of the soil content. It's not
Correct.
something that you can control, right? And so, like you correctly addressed, it's this toxicity study that you do on these raw materials that is going to convince them. But the question is, are they going to get convinced? Because if you look at the FDA regulations, and I've looked at them extensively, they themselves have the maximum allowed dosage, and all of these raw materials that have these presence of these heavy metals, they fall well under it. But the fact of the matter is that they are detectable. Right, so that's where the problem is, and I think we should have somebody to argue and hit hard on the desk, saying, you know what, this is not toxic.
Okay, thank you, Jammi. I want to bring you back, but I want to also bring Baswati back. Before that, I want to bring Dr. Palap back. Dr. Palap, you are coming to us from Mumbai. Dr. Palap runs a big research foundation called Palap Research Foundation. He has interacted with the FDA like Baswati ji has. He has a huge collection of drugs there. Dr. Palap, all yours.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me for this seminar, and it was a wonderful experience. I would like to congratulate all the people who spoke today. And I just want to add one thing. One time I was working on rasa asmas with the Institute of Technology at Mumbai. And we found that most of this and when any bhasma which goes to nano level, then the whole properties change. At nano level, it is not the chemistry that works; it is the morphology of the particle, nanoparticle works. Alpha, beta, epsilon. These are the three types of the particles which the same metal particles would have different actions. So therefore, rasa aushadhis should be tested for this type of the particles. Which type of the particles they are? Are they different from nanoparticles? That's one. Two, I requested many of the gynecologists, Ayurvedic gynecologists who are using Garbhapalaras. I said, give us the blood sample of these patients to test whether their blood has any of this heavy metal which is present in Garbhapalaras, which none is willing to do. I am interested to know from Jammi, they have been using these drugs, whether they have tried to study blood levels of these heavy metals. If such thing could be, we can prove that there is no any heavy metal in the blood of these patients, I think that would be a very great way to go about. I think we should take some clinical studies in this particular fashion, since those who are using these drugs must come forward to help us to do some clinical studies. Thank you very much.
Dr. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for sharing this, for asking this lovely question. I just want to introduce yourself, Dr. Palap, to people who are here with us. That Dr. Palap runs his large foundation, and he produces a very fascinating range of formulations. And particularly interesting about them is a compound, is a formulation. All of it is from Ayurvedic Samhitas. And one of it's called Sujat, which he has been giving mothers for many years now. And he guarantees that any mother who takes Sujat will deliver without problems. So there will never be any of the placental ill health conditions, and you will get a good baby. So Dr. Palap, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for asking this question. Jammi, all yours. Thank you.